Jai Gurudev.
Jai Gurudev, Mrinal.
How are you?
Very good. Well rested.
Good. Yesterday we couldn't record it.
My mistake, I did not connect with you, and I promised I'll give you the host key.
No worries.
Missed my mind.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. No problem.
How much did you cover yesterday?
See, yesterday, in fact, we wanted to read it again. For everybody's benefit's sake, we can read the whole thing again.
Okay.
It is a different understanding altogether when we read it second time.
Fine.
So part of it I read it again, but we can do it again so that it is recorded somewhere.
Fine.
Yeah.
That's what
So
we'll do.
it was, I think, let me get back. It is, I think, 31, page 31.
Fine.
Where you left the other day. 29, 31 looks like.
Okay.
30.
Done. Thank you, Mrinal.
Yeah.
Thank you. So we'll begin now. Om Brahmarpanam. Om Brahmanandam Paramasukhadam Kevalam Jnanamurtim Dvandvatitam Gagana Sadrisham Tattvamasyadi Laksham Ekam Nityam Vimalamachalam Sarvadhi Sakshi Bhutam Bhavatitam Trigunarahitam Sadgurum Tam Namami Shrutismritipurananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavat Padam Shankaram Lokashankaram Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayan Sutra Bhashya Kritau Vante Bhagavantau Punah Punah Sadashivasamaramбham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Parampara Vande Guru Parampara Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryankaravavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai Om Shanti 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 Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Chaiva Tato Jayamudirayet. So you stopped here, you said page 31, right?
Yeah, different realities we We read those again, but we can read those, the empirical and paramarthik, vyavaharik.
Okay. Okay. The cause of birth for the jiva.
The further, I think we can go further.
Further, yeah.
Yeah, I think understanding of Avtara we can start.
Okay. An understanding of Avatara. Am I enough audible?
Yes, Brahmaraji.
Yeah. In order to understand the Vedic and Puranic literature, one needs to have some understanding of the concept of Avatara. In the Bhagavata, Ramayana, and the Mahabharata, Rama, Krishna, and certain others are presented as avatars. Avatara means God incarnate. Because of its significance here, this concept will be analyzed briefly in terms of orders of reality. In general, we can divide the orders of reality into three. One is the absolute reality, Paramarthika, that which is Satya, Jnana, Ananta, Brahma, free from all attributes, and upon which the entire world depends. Then there is the empirical reality, Vyavaharika, which accounts for the world and all that is in it: space, air, fire, water, earth, the sun, moon, stars, the natural laws, and so on. Included in this order of reality are the various situations that cause joy and sorrow, as well as your physical body, mind, and senses. All means and ends, sadhana and sadhya, also have an empirical reality, some of which are already known to you and others are revealed by the Veda. Some of which are already known to you and others are revealed by the Veda. There are certain Vedic rituals, for example, that are prescribed for having a child or for going to heaven. The heaven mentioned by the Shastra is considered to be as empirically real as a material object here in this world. Thirdly, there is a purely subjective order of reality, pratibhasika, such as that we experience in a dream. So we have those three orders of reality. One is the Paramarthika, which is absolute reality, the total Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam, Brahma, the consciousness upon which everything else is dependent upon. And then you have the empirical reality, the Vyavaharika Satya, which is everything, all the Panchamahabhutas downward, including Papa, Punya, heaven, hell, all of that, our joys and sorrows, all that comes into the Vyavaharika Satya. And then we have the Pratibhasika Satya, which is purely subjective, like example, a dream. Empirical reality. A pot, for instance, is not something that you imagine. It actually holds water, but it cannot be considered to be independently real, absolutely real, because it is dependent on something else for its existence. That is the material out of which it is made. Therefore, you cannot say it is Paramarthika Satya, nor can you dismiss it as non-existent because it holds water. If you say the pot is absolutely real or that it is absolutely non-existent, your very statement does not hold water. Only an existent pot can hold water, a non-existent pot cannot. The existent pot is something that has a history. It was born at a given time and has lived in various homes. It has gone through a certain process of growth and old age, holes and repair work. It has seen ages and has passed through many hands. Now, having had its day, it is parked in some corner somewhere, an old useless pot. Thus, the pot definitely enjoys a certain reality, because of which we accept it as something that has a name and form, nama rupa, and behaves with certain laws. This reality is what is meant by empirical reality, Vyavaharika Satya. And for understanding the empirical reality, we have sense perception and other pramanas such as inference and presumption. When the Veda talks about ends like heaven and the means for attaining them, it is talking only about empirical reality. If heaven is a place, it is something within the creation and therefore is included in this order of reality. The various rituals enjoined by Veda imply a doer, karta, who must perform certain karmas in order to achieve the desired ends. Since the means and end are interconnected, the means also have an empiricality, whether they involve worldly action, laukika karma, or spiritual injunction, vaidika karma. Because means and ends are all dependent upon something else, they are not absolutely real. Therefore, they are not paramarthika, but vyavaharika, being totally within the empirical sphere. The word empirical is the closest English translation there is for vyavaharika, which covers everything known and unknown within the sphere of the creation that is not created by a given mind. It includes everything that is understood at a given time. It also includes all that is not understood now, but that may be understood later. This kind of world and the mind itself, the mind stuff, brain cells, and so on, all belong to the empirical world. The physical body and its organs, the senses and their constituents, the capacity to remember, to love, to think, and to know are all vyavaharika, meaning that they have an empirical reality. Subjective reality. Do you want me to read this empirical reality again, any of you? Subjective reality. The third order of reality is purely subjective and is called pratibhasika in Sanskrit. The dream is an example of this order of reality. Something exists because you see it. Any mistaken notion, unknown fears, and all forms of projections are also pratibhasika. When, for instance, you take a post for a man, sthanau purusha darshana, or imagine that someone does not like you, it is a projection, purely subjective and therefore pratibhasika. What you see is not there, but you still see, but still you see it. The very seeing gives your projection a certain reality. Everyone projects, everyone commits mistakes. Pratibhasika reality is possible because the mind is limited. It is not omniscient. Also, the mind has a particular background that creates for itself certain prejudices, fears, anxieties, disappointments, sorrows, and perceptions. This is why everyone at one time or another sees what is not really there and does not see what is there. For example, even though a person has some love for you, you may not recognize it, seeing instead some dislike, simply because you happen to notice the person frowning and you know not why. All projections, all mistakes are possible because you have a mind. You think so, and therefore it is. And since this reality that exists only for you has no empiricality, it is called pratibhasika. Wherever there is pratibhasika reality, there is error, and wherever there is error, the correction of error must be possible. That is, knowledge must be there. Suppose, for example, you are making pastry and mistake the salt for sugar. What you want is pastry, but what you get is something quite different. Both the sugar and the salt have an empirical reality because the senses are able to differentiate between them. At the same time, there is a mistake because sugar produces pastry and salt produces something else. If you're using salt thinking it will make pastry, you are committing a mistake. Given this particular fact, this law, error is always possible. This is all within our experience. Atma is the self-evident experience. Consciousness is experience. All experiences are strung into this consciousness by this consciousness, just as beads are held together by a string. Consciousness is there in all the three forms of experience: sleep, dream, and waking. These three experiences, severally and totally, are held in one experience called consciousness, which is all evident. It is evident that we create our own subjective realities, and it is also evident that we are dealing with a world which conforms to an order, which behaves in an orderly way. Thus, we have a cosmos which is empirical, a chaos which is subjective, and that which is constant, Satchit Ananda Atma. This Satchit Ananda Atma seems to exist in the form of a threefold reality. For lack of a better term, we use this term, that is, the threefold reality. In fact, there is only one reality, Satya Jnana Ananta Brahma. So there is the cosmos, which is order, which is orderly, that is the Vyavaharika Satya, which is the empirical knowledge, empirical Satya. Chaos, which is subjective, that is, depends on our own individual mind with all its background, samskaras, vasanas, raga, dveshas, all our fears, prejudices, all that we project upon what is or what we think is. That is the chaos in our mind, the subjective reality or pratibhasika satya. And then you have the absolute reality, which is constant, because of which all this is possible. It is because of the constant Satchidananda Atma that we even have the empirical or the pratibhasika satya. The relationship among the three orders of reality. Between the empirical reality and the subjective reality, there is a difference. The entire creation, empirical reality, is called Ishvara Srishti, the Lord's creation, and the projection of one's own mind is called Jiva Srishti, the individual's subjective creation. At all times, we are confronting these two orders of reality, the empirical and the subjective, on the basis of the one absolute reality, Satya Jnana Ananta Brahma. With this understanding of the orders of reality, let us return to the verse. Krishna says, I am born wielding the Maya, the Prakriti, in my hands. In this way, I assume a body. Because the Lord can create the whole world and also assume a body, there is no problem in seeing that Krishna's birth is referred to here as an incarnation of Ishvara based on the concept of avatara, Avataravada. But the next question would be, to which order of reality does the physical body that the Lord assumes belong? When Krishna points out that he is unborn, never born, he is pointing out the absolute reality, Paramarthika Satya. In fact, from the standpoint of absolute reality, no one is born. Thus, from this standpoint, Krishna is not born, and Mr. Krishna, who is standing before Arjuna, cannot be that Paramarthika Satya. It must be kept in mind here that we are not talking about Krishna, who is Paramatma, but we are talking about Mr. Krishna, who is born in prison, who had a body, who wore a yellow piece of cloth, who played a flute, and who, seated in Arjuna's chariot, was holding the reins of the horses in his hands. Is this Krishna who was teaching Arjuna Paramarthika? No, he is not, because his body is not Paramarthika. Surely then, we can say that Krishna's body is empirically real, Vyavaharika. But if it were to be taken as empirically real, would Krishna not have been born of his own karma, and therefore would he not also be a samsari like Arjuna? And if he were born out of his own karma, punya and papa would be there for him, along with dharma and adharma, doership and enjoyership. If he were bound by karma, where would be the possibility of his wielding the Maya? In order for his birth to be considered empirical, Krishna had to have been under the spell of karma, meaning that without his volition, his birth would have been determined by the very laws. Only then can his birth be considered to be like empirical that of Arjuna. The empirical reality of a jiva's birth. Arjuna, being a jiva, was born of karma. Even though he was born a prince, he had to go to the forest for 12 years and then live incognito for a year, all of which could be attributed to his past karma. The destiny of Arjuna's eldest brother, Dharmaputra, was also controlled by his own punya and papa. Because of his papa, he lost the kingdom. Otherwise, the dice would have rolled out differently, or he would not have thrown them at all. Some prarabdha karma was there for him. The Shastra itself talks about this kind of karma. Arjuna was a person, a jiva, born of karma, and therefore his birth, janma, was empirically real. He had a parentage and a physical body, mind and senses, all of which have an empirical reality, as we have seen. Krishna, on the other hand, said that as Ishvara, keeping the Maya under his control, he was born. We will see later why he was born. The reality of Krishna's birth. The body of anyone who is born is available for our perception. But what is available for our perception is not always totally true. The blue sky, for example, or a magician's tricks. Therefore, perception itself cannot establish the empirical reality of Krishna's birth. If, as Ishvara, Krishna is born, keeping the Maya under his control, his birth is definitely not subject to any punya or papa. Therefore, being not bound by karma, it has no empirical status. Birth itself, being what it is, cannot be paramarthika either. Nor can Krishna's birth be totally non-existent, atyanta asat, since he was not a Vandhya Putra, the son of a barren woman. He was born of Devaki and Vasudeva. Thus, it was not a totally non-existent Krishna who was talking to Arjuna. Then, how are we to explain Krishna's birth in terms of reality? With reference to his birth, Krishna is Pratibhasika. You see him, therefore he is. His birth is not due to karma. It is only apparent. Pratibhasika means that there was a Krishna whom everyone saw, but his birth and his body were purely Maya. Like everything else, they were born of Maya, but without the force of the law of karma. This kind of birth means that Ishvara is not condemned by the state of Jivatva, to the state of Jivatva. He merely assumes a physical particular body due to a certain necessity alone. But then if Krishna is Pratibhasika, not everyone should see him, right? Because Pratibhasika Satya is subjective.
Yeah, I was also having that question. Because I may think him as something and you may think him as something,
But we all see him as the blue-bodied Krishna with those beautiful eyes, the flute and everything. So now let's park that question for now. Let's read further. See, because if it is empirical reality, if it is Vyavaharika, he should have been born of some karma. Because his birth is not due to karma, it is only apparent. That way, I think that is why Pratibhasika, maybe.
And the way Arjuna saw, not other brothers saw him, nor Duryodhana. So everyone's reality looking at Krishna was different.
Yeah, I think that is the correct answer.
But then that holds true for everything else. Like, see how I see Mrinal. Maybe XYZ may not seem Mrinal. That is also my Pratibhasika Satya. That is true of everything, right? Even in the empirical world.
So we have come to erase this Pratibhatika karma, actually, So we have to become hollow and empty. Pratibhasika means that perception, whatever we have in our minds, has to go. Then only we can come to this Satya. So therefore, whatever sadhana we do, whatever the cleansing that we mean, that we are clearing this Pratibhasika reality, cleaning it. That is what is we can call it as Antakarma Shuddhi.
The chaos. It's very beautiful.
Chaos.
Cosmos, chaos, and absolute real and consciousness.
Yeah, wonderful.
All the three C's are there.
Hmm.
We have the cosmos, which is the entire creation, which is Vyavaharika Satya, including the laws, punya, papa, and everything else. And then the chaos, that is our subjective reality, which is Pratibhasika, and consciousness, which is absolute reality. So for all the three C's, we have to move from chaos, cosmos to consciousness. Move in the sense we should realize.
I think that comes in chapter 8, that Adhyatmika. No, I think that
Adi Daivika,
Adi Daivika, that is, I think, the same thing. These are the same. Mostly. I feel that.
I will explain. I will just read this para one more time. So then how are we to explain Krishna's birth in terms of reality? With reference to his birth, Krishna is Pratibhasika. You see him, therefore he is. His birth is not due to karma. It is only apparent. Pratibhasika means that there was a Krishna whom everyone saw, but his birth and his body were purely Maya. Like everything else, they were born of Maya, but without the force of the law of karma. This kind of birth means that Ishvara is not condemned to the state of Jivatva. He merely assumes a particular body due to a certain necessity alone. Why does Ishvara assume a physical body? And what is it that makes it necessary for the Lord to assume a physical body? In the Puranas, it is said that before every incarnation, there is a collective petition to the Lord in the form of prayers on the part of all the good people and even the Devas. Oh Lord, please do something. Please come and remedy this situation. It is time. Time's up. In fact, why haven't you come? The tyranny of these people is too much for us to bear, etc. These very prayers themselves become the material cause, the upadana karana, for the Lord to introduce himself in a particular form meaning that he assumes a body. The prayers of the jivas become the punya, because of which a particular body is born for a given purpose. This incarnation of the Lord is what is meant by avatara. The purpose of the avatara's coming may be just to do one job, like Narasimha avatara or Vamana avatara, or to do many, as was the case with Rama and Krishna. In addition to the many jobs they came to do, Rama and Krishna also served as examples with reference to how people should live their lives. Rama exemplified how one can live a life of dharma in the face of all adversity, and Krishna was an embodiment of joy and wisdom. It should be clearly understood that the concept of avatara is not required at all in order to worship Krishna as the Lord. A picture of Krishna as Ishvara is all that is needed for invoking the Lord. In fact, we can invoke the Lord in anything, even a rock. Invoking the Lord in a particular form and the concept of avatara are entirely different. We discuss it here only because the verse is referring to Krishna as avatara. Krishna himself says, "By my own powers of Maya, I, as though, assume a body." Shankara says in his commentary to this verse, while explaining how Ishvara assumes a body, Dehavan iva, Jataha iva, as though with a body, as though born. The word iva, as though, in Shankara's commentary indicates that there can be no empiricality here because Krishna's birth was not out of punya and papa. If there were punya and papa for Ishvara, then he would not be Ishvara at all. Therefore, when Ishvara assumes a body, he is only as though born. He has a body, but his body has no empiricality because it was not born out of punya and papa. If there were punya and papa for Ishvara, we would have the problem of an Ishvara with limitations with reference to the antahkarana, which is not acceptable. And as we have seen, that is not possible because Ishvara is all knowledge. Therefore, Krishna tells Arjuna here, without punya and papa, I am born, which is the very concept of avatara.
Brahmaraji,
Yes.
I have got a doubt here. What about Shankaracharya? Can we call him as Avatara? Or I think it is, he had some punya and papa, so he came as a birth, he stayed there for 5 years and took the Avatara or something like that.
No, Adi Shankara was the avatara of Lord Shiva himself.
But here it is being said that when we pray, that becomes a punya, and as a that karma phala, the Ishvara comes as the avatar.
Avatara.
Did we not read this before?
Correct.
Yeah, we did.
It is the sum total of the punya and the prayers of all, say, good people. I think that is what was mentioned.
Yeah.
See, the Lord, there is a petition, a collective petition to the Lord in the form of prayers on the part of all the good people and even the devas.
So it is not his punya and papa, punya,
Right.
it is a collective punya. And that's why he takes avatara out of his own maya. So it is not his punya, it is our punya uses and comes. That is
You mean Bhagwan taking avatara on the earth?
Yeah.
Collective
Dharma
punya.
samsthapanarthaya.
Collective punya.
Sambhavami yuge yuge. He himself said, no?
He said that, but he does not do this out of his own kind of volition. It happens because of this collective prayer.
Punya.
Why haven't
Yeah,
you come?
people will say that
Did it-
it's beyond our control. We are unable to. Please.
That is what, no, these very prayers themselves.
Paritranaya sadhuna, vinashaya cha dushkritam. All these sadhus, they will certainly pray. Either they pray directly, physically, with their voices, or the akrosha of their atma being due to the suffering they face in the hands of the bad people. The akrosha of the atma itself is enough when the sadhus are being troubled. At times, it's like, a court taking cognizance of an offense on its own, even without any complaint. Like that, sometimes the God takes cognizance on his own, or at times by the specific prayers of the people. At the end of the day, it is up to him. Assuming we don't even pray at all, when he knows that the order of nature is getting disturbed, he will step in. Just like Mother Earth takes a decision to shake her body a little by way of an earthquake to set things right. Hari Om.
I think over here, he needs to be called. The prayer has to be there. Then only he'll come, looks like. And here the importance of prayers we get to know.
It is combination of all, we can say. Culmination of all the things.
In chapter 3, we read, no, the cycle of creation continues. The creator Brahma created people, and with people propitiating the devas, and they give their results in the form of rain, their blessings in the form of rain, and all this is a cycle that continues creation. Similarly, I think the prayers, like Rinal said, the importance of prayers is important, because this is the adrishta phala of the prayer. Apart from punya, because that little punya is going on, the collective punya of the prayer that is accrued because of prayers of all like-minded good people is what manifests in the form of an avatara. That way, all enlightened beings are like avatars only. They've come with a... Can we also say that supposing one of us gets enlightened, or all of us get enlightened, will we be called avatars? Or will we be just enlightened people? It's a matter of, just a matter of nomenclature. I don't want to confuse anyone, but it's just a thought. Because I had this doubt when we have several enlightened people at the same time, like Ramana Maharshi. He had contemporaries. He was contemporary, I think, with Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. So they were all together. They're enlightened people. Can you call them avatars?
Hari Om, Vibhuti was also the word, no, Brahmaraji?
Yeah. Vibhuti in the sense?
They have
Ramana,
they have
may I
gone
say
beyond
something?
the body, mind, intellect concept.
Hello.
Yes, Dr. Renu.
In the Jyotish, they were taught that according to the planets, there are 9 Vishnu avatars. That from Surya, it is Ram. Because that's why they call him Surya Vanshi avatar. Then Chandra is Krishna. Then Nagar is Narasimha, Buddha is Buddha, and this one, Guru is Vishnu, Shukra is Lakshmi. Like that, there are solutions. And then according to Rahas, I will post it in the group. There are 9 avatars. The 10th is yet to come. This will be called something. So I will post it. And so these are the, according to the planets, different avatars. Like Buddha is Buddha. So, sorry, Guru is Ramasa. Then, you know, all these are avatars. And the 10th one called Kalagi Avatara. That will come and sometimes in Kali has not yet come. So according to that, they can't call others as avatars. But this is the what was according to Jyotish. I don't know what Gita said. Nana will be able to tell us. Please ask Nana.
So when we look at, thank you, Dr. Renu, for sharing. I hope everyone also was able to understand what Dr. Renu was saying. She's saying, according to Jyotish, based on the 9 grahas, 9 planets, there are 9 avatars or 10 avatars. You said 10, but there are only 9 planets. That is including the Surya, I guess.
That 10th is yet to come. And that will be called Kalagi Avatara. I will write it in the group, so
Right,
don't worry.
no problem. So 9 planets plus the sun. So that makes it 10. So each one has
including the sun. Including the sun.
The
sun, Suryavanshi Ram. Chandra, Krishna.
Right.
Mangal, Narasimha.
Mm-hmm.
Then Buddha. So accordingly, Guru is Ramasa Avatara. Okay, so like that. So what I'm saying, I will post it. There are 9 avatars. 10th is yet to come. That will be Kalagi Avatara for Kali.
Right. So my question is, now this is in the Kali Yuga. If we take that expanse of all the yugas, at one point we did that the concept of time, where you have Satya Yuga, Treta Yuga, Dwapara, and then Kali Yuga. So do these avatars recycle? Like, do they come in every yuga? I think Satya Yuga.
It is mentioned further, I think. Not necessarily it said, as I remember. Not necessarily. It's only when it is needed. As in when needed. And I think we may not be the avatars because our birth is because of Papa Punya. Because of our karma, we have taken birth. Avatars don't have that. Avatars come because of our punyas. They come as a karma phala. But we have taken birth because of our karmas. That could be the difference.
And like Krishna says in I think 18th chapter, he says, Vishanti. Once with this knowledge, they enter me. So at that point, all these enlightened beings, like for instance, maybe Ramana Maharshi and Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, once they're enlightened, they just merge with the consciousness. So there are no two there. There is only Advaita. So you can't call them either way. Same with you and me. Once if we become enlightened, if we realize ourselves, we'll just merge with that. So there is no distinction there.
There is a Hariom, there is a word called Divya Deha. They all are, I mean, they go beyond the body. So Divya Dehadari, they are called.
No, there is one sentence there. In fact, everyone is not born. He has written there, you know.
Yeah, let me
That,
And maybe the enlightened people we can compare with the magician's example. Like magician, the person who gets to know the trick that the magician is what trick he's doing, he's an enlightened person. He knows now what the trick is. So he gets to know the truth of the trick. That person can be called enlightened.
In fact, there is no difference between the enlightened, Avatara, Ishvara, Brahma, Satya Jnana, Manantam Brahma. They all are the same actually, isn't it? We in our small minds, we are trying to make a distinction there. But actually, they all are one.
That is what Guruji says, no, self, Guru and God are all one. Ultimately,
because of our Pratibhasika Satya, because of
we
the
are
chaos,
making
our
the,
subjective chaos,
we are creating the world.
We are creating all of this.
Yes.
Isn't it? So actually, there is only consciousness. We are failing to see that. We are in our little cocoons, in our own small minds. We're looking at the world with our own understanding. Let me read further. So the prayers of the jivas become the punya. I think I read this. No? Okay, let me read this. The prayers of the jivas become the punya because of which a particular body is born for a given purpose. This incarnation of the Lord is what is meant by avatara. The purpose of the avatara's coming may be just to do one job like Narasimha avatara or Vamana avatara, or to do many, like in the case of Rama and Krishna. In addition to the many jobs they came to do, Rama and Krishna also served as examples with reference to how people should live their lives. Rama exemplified how one can live a life of dharma in the face of all adversity, and Krishna was an embodiment of joy and wisdom. It should be clearly understood that the concept of avatara is not required at all in order to worship Krishna as the Lord. A picture of Krishna as Ishvara.
And Dr. Dharma, I took out my notes. It says 3 days is Brahma Mahesh, creator of creation and rejuvenation. But according to Graha, sun is Ram, moon is Krishna, Nagar is Narasimha, Dud is Buddha, Brihaspati is Vamana Avatara, Shukra is Parshuram, Shani is Purva, Rahu is Varaha, Ketu is Natasya, and 10th Lagna, which awareness, Satchit Anand, is pendant, which is Kalagi Avatara. So this is what Jyotish says. So they are not Avatara, is the answer.
Thank you. It should be clearly understood that the concept of avatara is not required at all in order to worship Krishna as the Lord. A picture of Krishna as Ishvara is all that is needed for invoking the Lord. In fact, we can invoke the Lord in anything, even a rock. Invoking the Lord in a particular form and the concept of avatara are entirely different. We discuss it here only because the verse is referring to Krishna as avatara. Krishna himself says, by my own powers of Maya, I as though assume a body. Shankara says in his commentary to this verse, while explaining how Ishvara assumes a body, Dehavan iva, Jataha iva, as though with a body, as though born. The word iva, as though, in Shankara's commentary indicates that there can be no empiricality here because Krishna's birth was not out of punya and papa. If there were punya and papa for Ishvara, then he would not be Ishvara at all. Therefore, when Ishvara assumes a body, he is only as though born. He has a body, but his body has no empiricality because it was not born out of punya and papa. If there were punya and papa for Ishvara, we would have the problem of an Ishvara with limitations with reference to the Antahkarana, which is not acceptable. And as we have seen, that is not possible because Ishvara is all knowledge. Therefore, Krishna tells Arjuna here, without punya and papa, I am born, which is the very concept of avatara. In the next verse, Krishna explains why as Ishvara he assumes a body. Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bharata abhyutthanam adharmasya tadatmanam srijamyaham. Bharata, O descendant of the Bharatas, Arjuna, yada yada, whenever he indeed, dharmasya of right living, glanihi, decline, adharmasya of wrong living, apyutthanam, rise everywhere, bhavati is, tada then, aham I, atmanam myself, srijami, bring into being, assume a physical body. O Arjuna, whenever there is a decline in right living and an increase in wrong living everywhere, I bring myself into being, assume a physical body. We saw in the previous verse that Krishna's birth represented the concept of avatara. Even though he is unborn and therefore not subject to death, there being no birth or death for Atma, and even though he is Ishvara, the Lord of the entire creation, still by the powers of his Maya alone, Krishna was as though born. Without being subject to his own dharma and adharma, punya and papa, he was as though born in this particular form. The creation is Ishvara's form, and in that creation, jivas are born. From the standpoint of consciousness, Chaitanya, there is only one, Paramatma. Thus, consciousness being one, each jiva is Paramatma, Brahman. From the standpoint of someone who is looking at the world, however, the one becomes the many, and there is difference between the jiva and Ishvara, the Lord. The jiva is a person who looks upon himself or herself as the physical body, mind and senses, karya karana sanghata, due to ignorance, avidya. And because of this ignorance, the jiva continues to be born as a jiva. Out of ignorance, the person continues to perform actions which produce punya and papa that result in yet another birth. This, of course, is a form of is from a particular point of view. As a jiva, you look at the world and at yourself, seeing differences where there is none. This is the standpoint from which all these discussions and arguments take place, the standpoint of Vyavahara, empirical reality, not Paramarthika, absolute reality. We say that Jiva is one who is born because of his own karma, whereas an avatara is one who is not born because of karma. Otherwise, the avatara would be a karta, a doer, and being a doer would have avidya. If this were the case, the avatara would be a jiva, not Ishvara. This then is the difference between a jiva's birth and Ishvara's birth. The whole creation is Ishvara, and when Ishvara assumes a particular form for a given purpose at a given time, we call that form an avatara. The concept of avatara is not mentioned in the Veda, although devas or gods are referred to. Rama and Krishna, for instance, are presented as avatars in the Puranas. But for our purposes here, it does not matter whether Vyasa put the wisdom into Krishna's mouth when he wrote the Mahabharata, or if a historical Krishna actually did the talking. If we look upon Mahabharata as historical, as is generally the case, then Krishna himself talked. The word itihasa, meaning iti ha asa, this is how it was, gives the epic a certain historicity. However, it is also recognized that many of the stories found in the Mahabharata have been spun around actual historical events. The Mahabharata is also considered to be poetry, just as the Ramayana is both historical and poetic. This means that the poet has the poetic license to create the rasas, the aesthetic values, and all kinds of situations at will. Thus, in Ramayana, we find Ravana with 10 heads and Hanuman who talks even though he was in the form of a monkey, along with many other situations not generally accepted as having happened or even imagined. Even so, the Ramayana, like the Mahabharata, is a story considered to have been based upon certain historical facts. So over here, when we looked at this there is only one consciousness, Chaitanya, and each jiva is from the standpoint of one who's looking at the world. However, the one becomes the many, and there is difference between jiva and Ishvara, the Lord. What came to my mind was the concept of the ocean and the bubbles, or the ocean and the waves. The ocean is the one that is consciousness, that is Paramatma, and each individual wave or even bubbles that keep coming up, keep propping up, are coming from that one ocean itself. But each one has an individual existence, like the jiva. So from the standpoint of the world, when you look at it, it looks as though the waves are different from the ocean. And there are many, and each wave is different from the other. But in fact, they're all the same. So it is because the jiva is covered by ajnana, by avidya. That is why he continues, as long as this avidya is there, he will continue in this cycle of birth and death. Because he is born out of some karma and he is a karta. And as long as he has this kartritva bhavana, he accrues more and more punya and papa. And this will keep the cycle of birth and death on. Whereas Ishvara is one who is born not out of karma. So he has no kartritva bhavana. There is no doership for him. And itihasa, meaning itiha asa. That is how it was. So, and the poet, the itihasa has the person who writes the itihasa, the people who've written it, like Valmiki and Vyasa, have it in them to create rasas and aesthetic values at will and all kinds of situations. So there may be some descriptions like Ravana having 10 heads, which we can't really imagine a person having 10 heads. But that was a poetic expression, whereas both of them are based on some historical facts. So there is some reality to historical reality to each of these epics. Although there are lots of others, I wouldn't say stories, but then concepts, imagination that have been spun around because of the authors, Vyasa and Valmiki. An avatara is like an actor. Krishna then is presented as an avatara, which is something like an actor who appears on a stage. the actor knows very well that he is not the role. Since Krishna knew he was playing a role, his birth can be considered neither Paramarthika, absolutely real, nor Vyavaharika, empirically real. Thus, in terms of orders of reality, there is only one possibility remaining to account for an avatara, Pratibhasika, albeit a different type of Pratibhasika, because the avatara knows he is playing a role that is not real, just play. Similarly, a jnani performing an action does not look upon himself or herself as a karta. This means there is no real vyavahara for a jnani. From his or her standpoint, meaning from the standpoint of Atma, everything is pratibhasika. Ishvara appears as though he is a person with a given physical body. What he does, of course, is in the realm of vyavaharika, but from his standpoint, from the vision of Ishvara, and avatara is purely pratibhasika, purely maya. This is like a magician who makes things appear by his or her own powers. For those who are watching what the magician is doing, everything is real. But for the magician, it is all maya, magic. Because this is the kind of birth being discussed, the questions when and why naturally arise. The questions about when and why, such as when is Ishvara born? How often is he born? Is he born daily? Is he born every century? Or is he born every other day in different places? And how is he born? For what reason is he born? Are addressed in this next verse and the next. So let me just read the first para here. Krishna then is presented as an avatara, which is something like an actor who appears on a stage. The actor knows very well that he is not the role. Since Krishna knew he was playing a role, his birth can be considered neither Paramarthika, absolutely real, nor Vyavaharika, empirically real. Thus, in terms of orders of reality, there is only one possibility remaining to account for an avatar, Pratibhasika, albeit a different type of Pratibhasika, because the avatara knows he is playing a role that is not real, just play. Over here, when we go back to what was said about how an avatara is born, because of the collective prayers, collective punya of good people. When you take the example of Hiranyakashipu and Prahlada, Prahlada was beseeching the Lord to appear, to come and save. He went on praying to Lord Narayana. On the contrary, his father was not. He was completely against him. So Prahlada was able to see Lord Narayana in everything. In the tiger, in the lion, in the elephant that was set to trample him. He was able to see Lord Narayana everywhere. Whereas for Hiranyakashipu, it was different. For him, everything was Vyavaharika. So that way, an avatara is Pratibhasika. It is subjective. Because it is, I think people who pray earnestly will be able to see that even an avatara, to understand that avatara is an avatara also is therefore pratibhasika, isn't it? Because demons will not see an avatara as an avatara. Like even Lord Bali Chakravarti, King Bali Chakravarti, he was not able to see Vamana as an avatara. He saw him only as a small little short dwarf. It was only when he started increasing his proportions, then he realizes Anyway, I just thought this thought came to me, so I thought I will mention it here. Why an avatara is pratibhasika and not vyavaharika? Because we had this question earlier. How is he pratibhasika? How is it subjective? So that we see Krishna as the Lord is pratibhasika actually. And how we take it is he just like Mr. Krishna with a blue body playing the flute, or we see him as Paramatma, as Ishvara, again is also pratibhasika. It all depends on how much of depth of understanding we have. No, it is not, yeah. Should I go further or should we discuss on this? Because it's already 6 o'clock here. We have half an hour of discussion on this. I think I will just read this. When does Ishvara assume a body? Because human beings enjoy free will, there may be abuse, which can lead to the destruction of law and order, dharma. When this destruction occurs, a person can no longer follow legitimate means for achieving legitimate ends. Nor can the person follow the means for gaining moksha because the society is not at all conducive to such a pursuit. Even for a person to pursue prosperity legitimately, there must be an order, an infrastructure, a structure of law and order that the majority of people follow. We can see this in a simple game of football. If no one follows the rules of the game, there is no game. Suppose the players dispose of the referees and blow their own whistles whenever they are not winning. How can there be any game? There is no football played. There is only a free-for-all. Similarly, the game of life cannot be played and enjoyed if there are no rules. In the home itself, certain rules are required so that daily life can proceed in an orderly way. And if these rules are not followed, there will be no home, only a mess. Society is the same. It is true that there will always be some foul play, as there is in any game. But if the majority of players refuse to follow the rules, the problem becomes enormous and cannot be ignored. This kind of a problem is called dharmasya glanihi, the decline in right living. The infrastructure for human behavior is based upon one's free will. And when this free will is abused at every turn, something drastic needs to be done. To put things in order requires a drastic action, and this drastic action is done by Ishvara, although Ishvara himself does not really decide to do anything. Like all actions, this drastic action is a result, a karma phala, of another action, a total action. Everyone's prayers, a total prayer. When people who want to follow dharma suffer at the hands of others, they find it impossible to follow dharma. As a result, moksha is not possible. When such a situation occurs, everyone prays because they want something to be done.
Dee, could you read this para again, please?
Yeah. The infrastructure for human behavior is based upon one's free will, and when this free will is abused at every turn, something drastic needs to be done. To put things in order requires a drastic action, and this drastic action is done by Ishvara, although Ishvara himself does not really decide to do anything. Like all actions, this drastic action is a result, a karma phala, of another action, a total action. Everyone's prayers, a total prayer. When people who want to follow dharma suffer at the hands of others, they find it impossible to follow dharma. As a result, moksha is not possible. When such a situation occurs, everyone prays because they want something to be done. This only signifies the importance of prayer, the Ishvara Pranidhana. Huh?
And it only shows that human beings are the only people who can create this adharma.
Yeah, because we have the free
The
will.
free will, yeah.
It can be either dharma or adharma. And dharmic people cannot pursue their purushartha of moksha as long as there is adharma. See, and if there is so much adharma happening, and for your own existence of your body, you have to wade through this adharma, then where is the question of moksha? All the time you're struggling to make the ends meet, to just take care of your body. So in order for that moksha purushartha to actually happen, the adharma has to come down. Therefore, dharmic people, all of them, they collectively pray. Each one prays, yes. So the collective sum total of all their prayers comes up with, has a karma phala, and that karma phala is what an avatara is. I particularly like the example of the football game, wherein the game is played only when there are a set of rules and everybody follows the rules. Like everyone, the creation is created and there are dharma is the untold law, untold rules, the common sense rules that everyone needs to follow. But if every player takes law into his own hands and does whatever he wants to because of his free will, just because he's not getting a goal, if they continue, take up the whistle, referee's whistle, and start blowing the whistle and hitting the ball as they like, then there is complete disorder. Yeah. So but then this infrastructure for human behavior is based upon one's free will, and something drastic needs to be done. For me, I didn't quite understand how that drastic action happens. How does it happen? I know in the Mandala Vatika, Dr. Prabhakar Rao was explaining that the yin and the yang, when something, there's a lot of positivity in your life, there will be something which is a little negative to bring that into balance. So in creation, there is always this play of opposites happening, which is a simple example is a tree grows, but the tree does not continue to grow. Like you have growth hormones, growth factors, there are also inhibitions, they call inhibins. These are substances, chemical substances that inhibit the growth of the plant. Otherwise, you will have plants that are all growing up to the sky. But why do plants have a certain height, a certain thing? Is because of these inhibins. So this is the play of growth and factors that inhibit growth. Similarly, in our life, you see, where everything is very beautiful, nice, everything nice is happening, there will be something not nice that comes to bring it back to balance. That is the self-regulation that happens in creation. But what I did not quite understand was this drastic action that needs to be done. How does that happen? Of course,
example could be Narasimha Avatar. Was that drastic action Avatara had to take?
Yeah, that is true. But Swamiji has mentioned that it is the prayer, collective prayer, that is what makes the Avatara happen. But I still have not completely understood that drastic action. that how the karma phala, sum total of karma phala of good people brings about the avatara in creation.
Or for that matter, the Dharma Yuddha which took place.
Mm.
Even birth of Shankaracharya, through which we are getting all this knowledge. We can call it as a drastic only,
No, I'm not denying the fact that the drastic action is fine. Drastic action, avatara, all these are the same. But how the karma phala leads to this drastic action? How the karma
That is
phala
what. Because, see, adharmic was increasing. People were not knowing how to go in a correct direction. That time, also like Krishna came and gave the Bhagavad Gita and all that. Similarly, we can call Shankaracharya came as an avatara only and gave us all the whatever Vedanta was about to go, vanish because of so many things, Buddhism, that, this, etc. Again, he compiled it, brought into a things and giving us this knowledge.
Yeah.
And many gurus are coming, not only a local guru comes there and directs, that also we can call it as an avatara only. Though we may not recognize a guru as an avatar at that time, but later on it comes to be that way. It happened to everyone, Sant Jnaneshwar, everyone. They have been abused, but later on they were prayed. So we may not recognize the avatara, but they are happening.
I think these people are not called avatars. They have some other term. I am not getting that term. They are not the real avatars.
Actually,
the main avatars are different, and these people are called something else. I'm not getting that term.
See, Shankaracharya came only to re-establish Hinduism, because Buddhism, they were so many things. So that was the main purpose.
Come again, Maltiji, couldn't hear you.
Actually, Shankaracharya came to re-establish Hinduism, because Buddhism, it ruined the whole entire Hinduism at that time. So that was the main purpose of his birth. He revived the whole Hinduism and all our Hindu Vedic tradition, which was lost during Buddhism.
That is why I'm wondering, when Dr. Renu mentioned Buddha as an avatara, was Buddha actually an avatara? Because his ideology was kind of quite different. So I'm just wondering why we call Buddha as an avatara.
Maybe people did not understand the real, Buddhism meaning. So many other interpretations and all came in between. Took a different turn altogether. Even now, some Tibetan Buddhism, so many things are, parallelly.
Yeah. The Pratibhasika.
We had to ask this question to Nanaji about Buddhism. How Buddha became an avatar. That's for me also it is confusing.
So even as we read this Gita home study, each of us has a level of understanding, isn't it? So that is our Pratibhasika Satya, for instance. So subjectively, each one of us understands differently. Similarly, Vedas have been there, but how everyone has interpreted them. Have they got the actual import of the Veda as the Veda is giving, or have they put in their own little understanding based on their background of prejudices, likes, dislikes, whatever be the background, but each one's understanding. We cannot say like Suresh ji's understanding of the Gita home studies exactly as what it is mine or anybody else's, isn't it? There is that element which is very subjective. So that is the pratibhasika. That is the chaos, the subjective reality.
Jiva
Now,
Shrushti.
Jiva, yeah, it's the Jiva Srishti, how we consider, how we look at things, how our mind looks at things. It's all mind stuff. But then the beauty of Paramarthika Satya is that it is same for everyone. It is absolute. There is no two things. And knowledge is true to its object. So similarly, it is Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. That is something which is constant, which is changeless, unchanging. That is why that knowledge is considered complete knowledge. Wherein, what is that thing? Yam labdva naparam labham. Having reached that, there is nothing else to be gained. Whereas in empirical reality, in empirical knowledge, there are so many theories that have been propounded that have been disputed by further knowledge that have come. Simple example is how when school we learned that an atom is made of protons, electrons, neutrons. But now quantum physics completely denies that. It says everything is fields, everything is wavelengths, everything is fields. So in empirical reality, there is knowledge is a continuous process. You cannot say this is final. Like another example is like how we see that the sun rises and sets, but actually it is not the sun rising and setting, it's the earth revolving, rotating about its axis that we see this. So the difference between Paramarthika Satya, Vyavaharika Satya, and Pratibhasika Satya. And Avatara is actually Pratibhasika and is not either Vyavaharika or Paramarthika.
As though he has taken birth.
As though he has taken birth. So that is why when all these festivals we celebrate, all these are actions only, right? They're all actions. Even celebrating Krishna Janmashtami and all that. When you look at it from one standpoint of view, from the standpoint of Paramarthika Satya, they all seem meaningless. They have no significance at all. But when you look at it from the standpoint of Vyavaharika and this Pratibhasika Satya, that they do have a significance in that they help in refining your inner antakarna, in purifying it, so that you actually understand what Paramarthika Satya is. It takes you there.
I do remember Guruji had talked about these three truths. And he had mentioned that Paramatma, which is a total truth, and Atma, the partial truth. And the third thing, what he mentioned, I really not getting it. Does anyone remember that? He has mentioned about this in one of the talks.
I don't remember this. And it seems so paradoxical, funny that in this Vyavaharika Satya, we get so caught up what this person said, what this person did. It's so funny, when you look at the standpoint of Paramarthika Satya, all this is such so insignificant. I mean, It has no existence at all. It is
But
only
if
in
you look at it, that is our total truth right now. And whatever we are talking about, Atma, Paramatma, that is Pratibhasika for us. Because
Yeah.
it is not tangible. We can't see that. What we are experiencing, that is a truth for us right now. But what are we talking about, the Atma and all? It's like a blind person talking about a light. This is what we are doing. We are just imagining. And that is why I feel that is Pratibhasika for us right now. We are trying to gauge, oh, it could be this, it is Manoranjan only for us just right now, I feel.
Yeah. Unless we clear up all the dust on the mirror, we will not be able to exactly see what the true Paramarthika Satya is. And all this is leading to that. This knowledge, whatever prayers we're doing, all the Nitya Karma, following Dharma.
Become hollow and empty. Go and sit in the advanced course. You will understand. Asango, asango.
But with what faculty we will realize that?
Manasa eva.
Manasa. But then how it is just that through clear mind only we can see, right?
Only here.
So
Clear,
they keep saying that you have to go beyond your mind and then ego. It's just clearing up the mind, is it?
Yeah, just clearing up the mind. Because two things are required. One, a Shuddha Antakarana is required, and Nischala Manaha. Just having a Shuddha Antakarana is not sufficient. You also require Nischala Manaha.
Nirmala.
Which is steadfast, like the unflickering lamp that in I think Dhyana Yoga it is mentioned. Nengate sopama iva. Like the lamp which is not flickering because of the wind. It is still, that still mind, pure mind and a still mind. These are two requirements. Otherwise, the mind from the time we wake up, even in our sleep, it continuously goes on and on and on. Thoughts based on, of course, based on our prakriti. And there are some thoughts we act upon, putting in our filter of raga, dvesha. If we are karma yogis, then we will do whatever has to be done. If we continue the cycle of action, desire, action cycle. But if we continue doing this with an attitude of a karma yogi, then we are slowly letting loose the hold of ragadveshas on our mind. It is a ragadveshas is the dust on the mirror of our mind. So once that is slowly cleared off, then there is some clarity. And then with dhyana, that is why both are important. Dhyana and jnana and bhakti. Nana was talking yesterday of bhakti. Yes, he said, having just knowledge might actually increase your spiritual ego and say, oh, I know all of this. I know this. I know this. But when you get the element of bhakti, which is why bhakti is very important. Krishna keeps mentioning that bhaktya, ananyaya bhaktya. That bhakti makes you dissolve that small I. And when that small I dissolves, that ego dissolves, then you merge. Otherwise, the wave will continue to say, I have independent existence, I. But that I has to dissolve with bhakti, saying, I And then that dissolution happens, that dissolving happens. The small I merges with the big I, and then so the bottom line is we have to use our free will in the right manner. In fact, even COVID is you can consider it a drastic action that came to reset and reboot the whole of creation. Because there was so much atrocities happening, so much adharma happening. COVID, in a way, when you look at it, has actually reset the whole system.
Maybe I may or may not be right, but when the COVID started, that time Brihaspati and Shani, they both were in 8th house, and it was Manana as if it was choking condition for even the Guru. So people were not thinking right, and everyone has seen the consequence of that.
Mm. So an avatara is part of the self-regulation of the creation. When something very bad is happening, there is birth of an avatara. Avatara comes into being to reset the whole thing, to bring about a balance. That is why throughout our Puranas, you hear about asuras and devas, asuras and devas. So there is always this play of opposites.
But there has to be calling from Jivas.
Yeah.
Mm. He doesn't take that action on his own.
Mm. That is why, I will just share this before we close. Vikram Bhaiya had mentioned once, I think he and Swami Sadyojata and all, they went to Gurudev. There was something not nice happening. They were worried about one particular teacher. So they went to Gurudev to ask him to, why is this happening? Please do something and all. Then Gurudev just said, go and pray. Go outside the kutir and pray. And they didn't know what. They said, why it is in your hands? Why don't you do it? But that's it. They said, because Gurudev said, go and pray. So they went outside and they just kept praying. And by the time, I think it was an hour or so, I'm not sure how much time went on. They finally, when they went back to Gurudev, that particular teacher had actually, that little issue that was there had actually resolved. So then they understood the power of prayer. So you can't just go and say, oh, please do this. Prayer is something that is, maybe we have to understand this prayer a little better, what prayer actually is. And how it of course has its effects. How we pray, with what attitude we pray.
For the first time, I've understood the importance of prayers.
Mm. Basically,
No, in Krishna also, he tells in the other verses, no? The whatever way you pray, the bhava, the whatever bhava you pray, that will be answered.
Mm.
In that respective degree. There is, I think, 9th or 12th verse it is there.
I think it's in,
chapter.
yeah, in the 4th chapter only. He says,
Yeah. Whatever
is-
bhava.
and he also says, no, in I think the 9th chapter, Patram Pushpam Phalam Toyam
Yeah,
me
toyam.
bhaktya prayachati tadaham bhaktyupahritam ashnami prayatatmana. So whatever you offer, it doesn't matter what you offer, but with what bhava you offer, that is important. And in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, it is that Ishvara Pranidhana is surrender, wherein you say, this is how much I can do in my capacity. I cannot do any more. So I give up to the higher power. I surrender to the higher power. That is prayer. That is one aspect of prayer. Another aspect of prayer is coming out of fullness, out of gratitude. Saying, I've received all this from you. I'm so very grateful. Coming out of fullness. There are 4 kinds of prayers, bhaktas. Artha, Artharthi, Jignasu, and Jnani. So it depends on what level, where you are coming from when you pray. Isn't it? So prayer is, so the prayer of a mumukshu is that earnest prayer, the call of a jiva wanting to become free. Whereas a jnani does not actually need to pray because he is nothing but the Lord himself. Right.
So this whole Bhagavad Gita is for reaching moksha.
It is moksha shastra, no?
Shastra, you know. So almost all karma yoga, whatever steps it is given, is for us only to reach that stage.
Brahma Vidya and Yoga Shastra. So it talks of both of sannyasa and karma yoga.
And the prerequisite is bhakti.
Prerequisite is bhakti coupled with jnana. Jnana is, of course, the ultimate, but with bhakti.
No, the ultimate is bhakti only. Jnana converts into bhakti later on. Bhakti brings again jnana. Jnana again makes bhakti. It is intermingling of jnana and bhakti. But ultimately bhakti only. Mad bhaktaha. You know, madhyaji, keeping me alone.
Everywhere he has mentioned jnana as the ultimate step. Correct? So
no, but bhakti also. At the end,
yeah,
is
no
bhakti.
doubt bhakti is there.
At the end, it is bhakti only. You do everything for my sake, for me.
But you know, Sureshji, when you say bhakti, there are 2 there. There is Dvaita Bhavana. But jnana is something that merges the Dvaita into Advaita. So bhakti is required to an extent, no doubt about it. But it is not bhakti which is ultimate. Ultimately, it is jnana.
No, in bhakti also you become one. Ultimate, that is ultimate. There might be a degree of bhakti also.
Exactly. So I think it's only a matter of terminology. We should not get caught up in the terminology here.
Yeah.
Ultimately, yes, but then as long as you're a bhakta, there are 2. You and the Lord, isn't it? So bhakta means there is Bhagwan and bhakta. There is always this Dvaita Bhavana. So, but when you go beyond that with knowledge, then you realize that you are nothing but Bhagwan. You are him and he is you.
Dee, I had a doubt here. I realize the importance of prayer, but can sometimes desire also lead to a prayer? If you have a desire towards a good desire?
Yeah, it leads to prayer and you surrender it.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Like, for instance, you want your child to say come out of some not so good behavior. You tell your child, and then and it's not happening, then you can surrender, you pray. That's a desire, isn't it? You want your child to be different from what he or she is right now. So when you pray, and you pray fervently, then drop it. Whatever has to happen will happen. And eventually, I think change will happen.
Thank you.
Yeah. So we'll continue with adharma is the real cause to the destruction of dharma from tomorrow. We'll conclude here. Om Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Tat Sat Shri Krishna Arpanamastu.